Hi, this is Tony. In this episode, we talk about where our help comes from. Towards the end, I reference a few songs that were helpful for me. Originally, our plan was to play a few clips from these songs, but we're concerned about copyright issues. Instead of playing the clips themselves, we'll post links to the songs on our website. We hope that you visit totallygotoutofbed.com to find the links to those songs and that you find them as helpful as I did. Hello, and welcome to Totally Got Out of Bed, a project and a podcast by two non-experts sharing their stories in the hope that you feel less alone as you struggle to live in the wake of a lost suicide. Whatever brings you to this podcast, welcome to the club. We're sorry you're here. I'm Tony Plant, and I lost my daughter Anna to suicide on January 30th of 2016. She was 15 years old.
And I'm Nora Flum. I lost my son Eric on January 3rd of 2018. He was 25. Before we begin today's chat, we're getting close to ending our series on getting through the first year, so I'd like to ask for your help. As we move into the next phase of this project, after getting through that first year, we're imagining what the next phase will look like. That's where you come in. What would be helpful to you? Would you like to hear other people's stories too? Should we bring in guest speakers? Do you have a story to tell that you're willing to share? Please send us ideas, questions, suggestions, and especially if you're willing to tell us your story, make sure you tell us that too. Write to us at totallygotoutofbed@gmail.com. Today, we're focusing on the help. During that first year, where does our help come from? We talked in a previous episode about the ways that God helped us get through. So although I 100% believe that any healing or living I've been able to do since Eric died has been God-given, and I could probably do at least a whole episode on my own about God's story in my story. I'm just not going to focus on that right now. Let's talk about other ways we've been helped in this miserable journey.
Oh, I know you're 100% right, Nora, when you say you could do a whole episode on God's part in your story. And I know you could, and I bet I could too. But you're right. In this episode, we're going to talk more about how other people and other things have helped us. Maybe it was God's doing, for sure, but it was carried out by people or things here on earth. The first thing that comes to mind for me are the basics. The people who showed up with food, the people who barely knew us that sent cards and left posts and messages on social media, and the people that knew Anna and stopped us at the grocery store to say something to us about her. It's like we said a few episodes ago, we're always thinking of our person that died. Having someone bring up Anna's name didn't make me sad. Having someone else bring her up was actually comforting to me, and it gave me the opportunity to talk about her. I also really appreciated it when people had done a little bit of grief homework, and so they just had a little bit of grief etiquette. It was really helpful to hear somebody say, "I'm just so sorry. There's no words," instead of saying, "How are you?" in that voice that just sort of makes me cringe. I guess just knowing how not to approach us was a huge help. I know I mentioned it before, but our society sucks at grief. We need to discuss it more and help people know what the helpful words are. Things like, "I know how hard this is," are just not helpful. And unless you've lost a child to suicide, you don't know how hard this is. And even if you have, you don't know exactly how it is for me. Everybody's grief stories are different, and everyone's grief is different. It's just so much more comforting to stick with the "I'm so sorry, there are no words." It gave me the opportunity to just say thank you. And that was a lot easier than having someone ask, "How are you?" and having to respond with either "living the fucking dream" or "How the fuck do you think I am?"
100%. And I remember I've had a lot of grief stories in my life, and one of the first things that I remember from the most significant grief experience I had was when I lost my father. And the community that I belonged to, I was in college at the time, and they were so surrounding and so caring, and they kept asking me, "How is he? How are you?" Especially if they hadn't heard that he had died. and I had to tell the story over and over and over again. And that was grueling. But I remember one guy named Tom, as I was taking my dishes to the conveyor belt after a meal, he just stood up, he hugged me, and he said, "I know this is so hard. I'm so sorry." And that was it. And it was such a relief. I didn't have to explain, I didn't have to justify. It was an incredible gift, and I've never
Mm-hmm.
forgotten that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but so that was probably the first significant part of a grief story that I can remember. As far as since Eric died, though, um, I think I mentioned before in a previous episode that one of my counselor colleague friends came over to be with us a day or two after Eric died. He said he didn't know what to do, but he could come and sit in the shit. That I think defines what I needed and still need most. Someone to be present in the grief with me. As I was working on the points I wanted to make during our chat today, I went back to the journals I kept during that first year, and I'm so glad I wrote my thoughts and feelings and experiences down. I stumbled on memories I would have lost. It was so valuable to me to look back now that 3 years have passed and remember the details. Not that I needed to be reminded of the pain, that I remember really well, but the details about the rays of hope that happened during that first year had all but disappeared from my memory. One memory I rediscovered while reading was that on January 26th, I had my first fairly normal day. That was just over 3 weeks after Eric died, and the day after, my journal entry starts, "Yesterday was so far the most normal feeling day," and then described the mundane things I had done and the one special chore I did. I had saved the flowers from the funeral. Someone found online a way to dry flowers, hang them upside down for 2 weeks, and then spray them with Aquanet. So I sprayed them with Aquanet that day, and I put them in vases, and they're still in my house. But that's what I did that day. On what I had described as the most normal feeling day up until then, one thing I did was preserve the flowers from my son's funeral. How the fuck is that normal?
No kidding.
But then I also wrote about our tech genius Wendy and her husband's invitation to dinner. Matt and I went and ate and we played games, and I wrote on the following day, and that was lovely. It felt normal. I was able to refer to Eric in conversation without breaking down, although I know that breaking down with them would have been safe. We enjoyed ourselves. We laughed. Joy wins. I had written in my journal 3 weeks after Eric's death, "Joy wins." And that refrain is written several places throughout that journal. In the midst of grief and trauma, somehow I was able to say joy wins. A few weeks later, though, I went to dinner with another friend and sobbed the whole way through. She kept asking, "What can I do? Tell me what to do." And I didn't know. I had no clue what she could do, except exactly what she was doing, letting me be with her and letting me sob. And as I look back on that, the takeaway is that the biggest helps from that time were the people that invited me back into normalcy, but didn't expect normalcy from me and didn't judge when I wasn't normal. They would invite me into normalcy, invite me to sit in the sunshine, but they were also willing to sit in the storm. They'd sit in the shit with me.
That is so perfect. They invited you into normalcy, but they didn't expect you to be normal. I just think that's exactly what we all need during those times of intense and unrelenting sorrow and grief. The opportunity to be part of the normalcy without feeling the expectation to be normal. And that just really resonates with me, Nora. I think that's just such a good way of putting it. It's like, you know what? I have to be able to feel comfortable enough with you to not be normal if this normal isn't working for me right that minute. And so I needed people to be around me and sit in the shit too, as you would say. And sometimes I just needed people around to not even talk. I just needed to be able to sit with them. And sometimes I needed to talk, and I needed to talk about everything. I needed conversations with people telling me that I was at least a little bit normal. I turned a lot to my family during these times, of course, as I'm lucky enough to have them living very near here. I spent my time with and around people that cared for me and knew my Anna. In my case, that meant my siblings. My husband and my son, my 2 siblings and their spouses, and the 6 nieces and nephews that belonged to all of them were exactly what I needed all the time. We were so close before our nightmare and became even more so from that point on. We got together as a family very frequently, almost weekly, I think. And it was like group therapy every time. Somebody always was crying by the end. I highly recommend it to get yourself a group like this, a group that gets you and understands you and is just as heartbroken as you are. Those are really the people that got me through it on that sort of day-to-day basis. Those are the people who just plain got me. They understand, they understood. They were and they still are my people.
The community, 100% is what we needed, our people. And
Mhm.
again, now as we record this, we are in the time of COVID, and community looks different now. So we can't always be with the people that we would love to be there, but we can appreciate their efforts to be with us in other ways. So besides the community, which we so desperately need, one source of help that I can't control and that we can't control, most of us, I think, is dreams. That's another thing I journaled about. I dreamt about my dad once in a while, and I had dreamt about my mom often. I once commented that I saw my mom so often in my dreams that it was like I didn't even miss her. I saw her more often after she died than when she was alive. We were always close, but we never lived close by, so I'd see her only a few times a year or maybe just a couple times a year. But the first dream I journaled about after Eric died, I'd entirely forgotten about until I read it again as I prepared for today. It was only a couple weeks after Eric died, the night before we were going to clean out his condo. In the dream, we were cleaning out Eric's things, and my mom was with me. I knew in the dream that she was dead, but she told me, "I decided to come with you. I didn't need to stay where I was." When I woke up and remembered that, that gave me the boost of courage and strength that I would need. Mom was with me as we went to do one of the hardest things that a parent should never have to do: invade the privacy of an adult child, throw away, donate, or pack up his life because of his death. After a few weeks I journaled that I hadn't dreamt about Eric yet, and that bothered me. But then my very next journal entry was that I dreamt about Eric. In my dream, he was a toddler, smiling and laughing and full of joy like I remember from his toddler days. And in the dream, he ran into a house. I tried to stop him, but he wouldn't listen, and then the house exploded, and I woke up. It doesn't take a dream interpreter to know what that meant. A few weeks later, I had another dream. In it, I was walking and looking down at the snow and ice beneath my feet. The weather was warm, and it was starting to thaw. If you live in an area with harsh winters, you know the joy of watching ice and snow melt in the spring. In the dream as I walked, I came upon the aftermath of an explosion, probably about the size of a city block. The explosion had left a deep crater, which revealed the underground apartments and dwellings of many people. The explosion had happened a while ago in the dream, and I could see people working amidst the devastation. There was cleanup, there was movement, there was restoration. I woke up and journaled that to me, that was a sign that I was recovering. I was frozen and shell-shocked. But the ice was melting, and the cleanup was happening, and the restoration was underway.
Mm. Wow, that's a very cool dream with a very clear analogy. Definitely. I haven't been as lucky as you in that regard. I don't have many dreams about Anna, and the ones that I do have, I don't remember very well. I do remember the feelings I get from them, though. They're generally dreams where she's gone somewhere. She's almost always a younger child. I never dream about her at the age that she died. She was either 7, 8, sometimes 4. And it's like she's gone, and we know she's gone, but she comes back. And then when she comes back, we're just so happy to see her. And then she'll go away again, and we'll be not happy, of course, but just sort of accepting that she's gone. I'm sure these dreams for me are about me learning to live with and accept her death. I usually wake up feeling a little melancholy, like missing her more than usual, but almost grateful to have been able to see her in my dream, if that makes any sense. I like dreaming about her, and I wish I dreamed about her more, but I'm like you said, it's something that you don't have any control over, so you just kind of take what you can get.
Yeah, after the dream, you wake up and you feel like you have been in their presence, and that's comforting.
Mm-hmm.
Another dream I had that was healing for me was this. I dreamt Eric was a child, like you said, maybe 7 or 8, and yeah, usually you're right that most of the time I dream about him when he was little. Very, very seldom when he was the age that he died. Anyway, I dreamt that he was a child, and we were talking about his leaving. And I told him it was okay if he left. It was okay to go and to be with Grandpa, who had left before he was born, and with Grandma, who had left when he was a teenager. I told child Eric, I said, you can meet Grandpa Till and see Grandma Aggie again. And Elijah, said child Eric. And Elijah, the dog he loved that had died a year or two before Eric had died. And Eric looked happy. And in the dream, I told him I would go with him if he wanted. I swear in my conscious mind I had not thought about hurting myself and leaving that way, but if dream child Eric had said he was scared and didn't want to go alone, I might have done it. But he didn't. He said, "No, Mommy, you stay. I'll be all right." And he left. And I know it might sound cliché to say that he walked into the light, but in my dream, that's what happened. And after that dream, my grief changed. I wasn't sad for him anymore. I knew he was okay. I knew he was with my mom and dad, and with his cousin that had died before birth. I knew he was happy. And I knew he was completely healed and whole and loved. And I knew that God accepted and loved him face to face. After that, my grief became about me, my loss, my emptiness, my anger about his leaving without saying goodbye. And still that's what triggers me. I know he's good. He's literally glorious. But I'm still recovering from the bomb that exploded when he left. Since then, I've dreamt about him several times, and in each one, I ask why. And that's when he leaves or I wake up. I need to start remembering not to ask why.
Wow. Again, wow. Some deep dreaming you do, Nora. I'm actually more than a little jealous about it. It sounds lovely and fulfilling. And I'm sure, like we said, we feel happy that we saw them in our dreams, but maybe a little unsettled when you wake up too. It's strangely unsettling and soothing at the same time, which I know we've all learned over time that these emotions can happen together simultaneously, like a good one and a bad one, like unsettling and soothing at the same time, like joyful and grieving at the same time. Um, and another thing that helps me along those same lines and becomes a little unsettling, but is also soothing, is music. And it's kind of a creative way, I guess, of trying to get through your grief. And as I'm looking through these songs that I sort of have narrowed in on that I want to share with you today, I realize it's sort of a grief process. The 4 songs that I picked, and I literally could pick 100, so I didn't. But the 4 that I picked kind of stand out when I talk about or think about Anna. And I got to say that actually any song, almost any song, multitude numbers of songs, I can find a way that I relate it to Anna. But these 4 in particular really bring me back to her. And obviously it's the sad songs, of course, and but also for me, it's sort of this, like I said, a grief process where like the warriors anthems remind me of her too. It's like at first, this first song I'm going to play is called Brave by Sarah Bareilles, and I sing specific lyrics to her. And I just wonder sometimes if it's me, like kind of being angry with her almost and saying, like, I wish I could have told you this before. I'm just going to play a little bit for you right now, and then I'll talk about it a little. But here you go. So the words were, maybe there's a way out of the cage where you live. Maybe one of these days you can let the light in and show me how big your brave is. So say what you want to say and let the words fall out honestly. I want to see you be brave. I just, from the beginning, I sing it loud and I feel closer to her. Maybe it's like this mom in me saying, I wish I could still sing it to her, or that I wish I had sung it to her. But it helps me for whatever reason. So I get through that little bit of anger that I didn't don't know exactly where it comes from, and I move on. And another song that comes to me that I find solace in is that when she died, I changed the ringtone on my phone, and it's been this way ever since. And it's by a band called Fun, and it is called well, you'll probably recognize it if you listen here. So, obviously that song is like, just get the hell out of bed, people, because when you're lost, if you're lost and alone, or you're sinking like a stone, carry on. May your path be the sound of your feet upon the ground, and carry on. It just gives me hope, a certain feeling of, you know what, I just got to keep going. You remember? Totally got out of bed, just got to keep on going. And then sometimes I go back to thinking about Anna and how sad she must have felt, and all the people that I know that have died by suicide would probably agree that our people must have had a deep sense of pain. It must have been so bad. And I think I go back and I think of a song by the Indigo Girls that is really meaningful for me, and it's called Closer to Fine. And I'm going to play this one too because, well, that's how I am, and I think people need to listen to music because I think it's more meaningful. Either that or I'm going to sing it, and that's going to be a bad thing. So here we go. So, I mean, that when I read those words and I heard that song the first time after she died, I was like, that has got to be Anna. And it just says, and darkness has a hunger that's insatiable, and lightness has a call that's hard to hear. And I wrapped my fear around me like a blanket, and I sailed my ship until I sank it. And I think that's probably how it was for Anna and probably many others. They couldn't seem to get out of the dark. And so then, after I feel that sadness, I had to at one point come to the acceptance that things were probably better for her now. And the song that comes to my mind the most, which is actually really difficult for me to listen to sometimes, is the song called Amazing Grace, My Chains Are Gone. And we had that played at her funeral. And it's just one of the most beautiful songs. It's obviously written in conjunction with Amazing Grace, or he uses the words to Amazing Grace, the hymn. And Chris Tomlin mixes this together with a few of his own new words. And so I'm going to play it because it's just so stunning. And so those words just bring me peace and sorrow all at once. And I think, my chains are gone. I've been set free. My God, my Savior has ransomed me. And like a flood, his mercies reign. Unending love, amazing grace. And those words, my chains are gone, I've been set free, are just at the center of my soul when I think of her death. She must have been set free. And I just want to recommend that if music soothes you, I urge you to search for some to help you through your losses. It can really be so healing.
The choices you've picked, Tony, are incredible. Music is something that speaks to the soul in a way that sometimes words cannot. If you're listening and you have songs that speak to you in your grief, I know that there's a bunch of things out there that I've seen that are so meaningful to people, but we'd love to hear what has been helpful for you guys that are listening, the music that speaks to your soul. One last thing that I wanted to talk about that helps, say their names. My friend that I talked about earlier, the one who let me sit and bawl at dinner and who kept asking me what she could do to help, she lost her adult son tragically about a year later. Not to suicide, but still a terrible shock and a terrible surprise. While I hate that it happened to her, I so appreciate having someone close to me that gets it. And her mantra has been, say their names. And she'll text me sometimes and say, we love them. She'll text me Eric's name and she'll say her own son's name. We love them. Say their names. When you say Eric's name, you aren't reminding me of my pain. You're saying that you remember him. And like Tony said earlier, that pain is always with me. You're giving me permission to think about it. You're acknowledging the hell that I'm in. And the tears you get when you say his name are nothing to be ashamed of or sorry for. Just for a moment, maybe. You've invited me to step into my real self. to let down the mask that I wear because that's the way I've learned to get through the day. You've said you remember, and you know the shit is still there. And you're telling me you're willing to sit in the shit with me, so I'm not always in it alone. And with that, we need to bring today's episode to a close. Please call 911 if you or someone you know is in immediate danger, or go to the nearest emergency room. Call 1-800-273-8255 or text HELLO to 741-741. Those are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week throughout the United States. And check with your local or county health agencies to see if they have a mobile crisis response team. For more information about Totally Got Out of Bed, visit us at totallygotoutofbed.com. That's one word. You can find other episodes there, or look for us wherever you get your podcasts. Please share our page and our podcast with your friends, and share your comments and ideas with us. Remember, we need input as we imagine what this project becomes after we get through our series on the first year. We'd like to hear from you. Again, email us, totallygotoutofbed@gmail.com, or visit Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter.
And as always, we'd like to thank our extremely talented team. Wendy Wolf, our technological genius. Monica Lavorsi, the composer and performer behind our theme song, Hold My Hand Now. And a special thank you to Survivor Resources, the group that continues to support us and others in the wake of our tragedies. Thank you for listening today. Please join us for our next episode, when we'll continue our series on getting through the first year by asking the question, what's happening to my body? We'll talk about the physical side effects of trauma and grief. In the meantime, smile when you can and cry when you have to, and do totally try to get out of bed.
Hold my hand now. Hold my hand now. Hold my hand now and be as one. The colors start to fade. Gray is the only shade that you see now. Lost in the charade of the journeyman's parade, can't see a way out. As you keep marching onward, oh, all you gotta do is reach out and hold my hand now. Hold my hand now. Hold my hand now. Hold my hand now and be as one. Hold my hand now. Hold my hand. The tracks begin to sway. You're in the middle of the fray, so hold on tight now. Your grip begins to slip. You tumble towards the lip of the open train, and how? But before the world swallows you up, reach out, there's a place to